back to Shoot Punch Kick, the most violent podcast on the internet, and your budget-friendly time machine back into the world of 80s and 90s action, sci-fi, and horror cinema. How are you guys
What's
doing
up?
today?
Happy Cinco de
Good.
Mayo, at least on the day of recording.
Okay,
Yeah.
they're
And
recording.
happy 1 month later to everyone listening.
Oh yeah, is it month? Okay.
Happy-
Wow.
No, we're a couple
Like
episodes
really
ahead.
far
so
ahead
just-
now. All right,
just,
very cool.
people in
I
the loop.
figure at this point we don't need to introduce ourselves, or since we're kind of, you guys know the drill now, the subscribers. Hopefully you do. If you don't, go back to the previous episodes. So today we're going to be heading back to 1991 to revisit a little film called The Last Boy Scout. And that's not a movie by Victor Salva. This is a Tony Scott film starring Bruce Willis and Damon Wayans. And personal favorite of mine, but I believe, and I think we're kind of split down the middle between the both of you in terms of your experiences with it. So, Carlos, what's your experience with this film?
So this was a movie that I'm sure it's one of those. I'm sure I saw it. I was always aware of it. It's you asked me. The poster is kind of ingrained in my head, but seeing it this time was basically the same as seeing it for the first time because if and when I had seen it, I certainly don't remember it.
Same here. I vividly remember the box. I remembered a couple of scenes, especially like the football set pieces. But for all intents and purposes, I'm counting this as a first watch for me too.
Yeah, the only thing that started to vaguely ring a bell was the finale in the arena and him on the horse. But other than that, everything pretty much ran to me as like it was brand new.
Yeah.
Okay, I rented this back in the day when it came out on VHS, and I remember really enjoying it. It just felt like a grown-up movie, like when you hang out with a bunch of old dudes and they're just like kind of talking, and you're the little kid just listening.
Yeah.
And then I bought it on Laserdisc when Laserdisc was a thing. And
Do you still have that Laserdisc collection,
watching the
Telly?
hell out of it. No, it got destroyed, and I kept a couple of ones that my couple of favorites. But yeah, a lot of my laser discs were just I didn't keep.
Good
Because
care of
you had
them.
to flip them, and I would be one of those people that leave like CDs and laser disc on top of the machine, and they get all scratched
Yeah,
up and
yeah.
everything. So
That's one thing that they didn't say, and it's a shame though, because a lot of those things have a lot of value now too. The players are expensive.
Mhm.
The media itself, has a good trading rate. They're becoming, clearly as time passes, they're becoming more and more rare as they're getting destroyed because, kids like us this is why we can't have nice things, Telly.
Well, that's why.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why it's valuable with like comic books because
Yeah.
like people started taking such good care of them. They're like, all right, we got too many. Like,
I
Exactly.
swore, I
Yeah.
absolutely swore that my collection was going to be worth millions. I had like number one Spawn, Signed, The Death of Superman, like all these things.
and then it's
but so did
everyone's like,
everybody
yeah,
else.
me too. Yeah.
Exactly. So
Right.
did everybody else.
But so let's go into the plot synopsis. So again, we always generate our plot synopses through ChatGPT to gauge how accurate the AI is.
Let's
So
see how
here's the
our
one-
overlords did today.
Yes, so here's the one for ChatGPT. Listen very closely. The Last Boy Scout, directed by Tony Scott and starring Bruce Willis and Damon Wayans, is a gritty action thriller set in Los Angeles. The story follows Joe Hallenbach, a disgraced former Secret Service agent turned private detective who teams up with a disgruntled former professional football player, Jimmy Dix. When they uncover a conspiracy involving corruption, murder, and blackmail within the world of professional football, they must navigate a dangerous web of deceit and violence to uncover the truth. As they race against time to stop those behind the sinister plot, they confront their own personal demons and form an unlikely bond forged in the crucible of danger and betrayal. With pulse-pounding action sequences, sharp dialogue, and a noir-inspired atmosphere, The Last Boy Scout delivers a thrilling ride from start to finish.
So I feel like ChatGPT is getting more like overview. They're like, look, I'm not going to tell you what happens in the movie, but I'll just tell you like the overall kind of idea. I thought this might have been ChatGPT's best yet.
That's what I was gonna say. Maybe not as the most specific, but definitely the most accurate. I didn't detect a single, and maybe I'm wrong, but I didn't detect a single thing that was incorrect, as we found in a bunch of the other descriptions.
Yeah,
That
I
But
noticed they
it's
used the
all
term
adjectives.
personal demons here again, and they use that for the Crow synopsis.
it's a common theme. I mean,
Yeah.
right? Tell me about it.
Yeah. we're all fighting our
You
demons.
want to talk about some demons? That's a whole different podcast, buddy.
For sure. So The Last Boy Scout came out on December 13th, 1991. So a Christmas holiday release. It was the budget was $43 million, which was a lot back in the day, if you could imagine that. And it grossed 114.5 million at the box office, which I think is worldwide, but I could be wrong. So back in 1991, what was going on? I think for guys our age, that was the summer of T2.
Yes, it was.
That's what I
Yes, it
associate
was.
with 1991. That's
And
like the only
nothing
thing I
else.
associate
Oh,
with
and Use Your
1991.
Illusions. And Use
Yes.
Your Illusions. Those are the two events, the only events that occurred in all of 91.
Yes, and other movies that came out, which I saw, Point Break. I think that was sort of Keanu Reeves' first action movie, and sort of paved the way for him to
Wow,
become
I
an
thought
action
that
star.
was later.
No, yeah, it was early.
Okay, well, according to Carlos's research, it was 1991, so I'm going to stand by it. The Perfect Weapon, The Doors, FX, The People Under the Stairs,
Yeah.
a personal favorite of mine, and
Damn.
Double Impact, Showdown in Little Tokyo, Out for Justice. So a big year for action movies. And then what was going on in the world? It was the Gulf War, CNC Music Factory, Ice
Gonna
Ice
make this
Baby,
to your
and
baby.
Guns N' Roses, Use Your Illusion 1 and 2, because of Terminator 2, right?
Yeah, I mean, again, that was a major time for T2. I guess that's not this movie. I'm sorry. I just get excited when you mention T2. I'll stop.
Okay. Okay, well, let's start getting into the film. So it was written by the legendary Shane Black, and the story by Shane Black and Greg Hicks. And apparently this was one of the most expensive screenplays ever purchased. It
Yep,
was
1.6, right?
yeah. According to Wikipedia, it says 1.75 million for the script. The
Oh,
Geffen Film
damn.
Company purchased that script.
Yeah.
And this film follows, in terms of Shane Black's filmography, this followed directly after Lethal Weapon 2.
I think it's also worth note to mention that this movie, apparently he wrote it after a big breakup, like a divorce. And I think if you look at the script, you can kind of see some of that reflected in the script. And he said he credits this as the thing that kind of got him over the divorce, just kind of locking in and writing the script. And then to have it be the largest payout for a script up to that point was a huge validation for him. But again, you can kind of, I think, in the script see some of the, I don't want to say bitterness, but some of the, kind of like angst that happens in a divorce in the script and in the relationship that the main character has with his wife.
Everybody was looking at his best friend like,
Mhm.
Yo, I
you
had
got
to
something you
consider
want to tell us?
that. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
so-
fucked up.
And
Good point.
so the reason I picked this movie, again, I really love this movie from even back in the day, but I thought this would be an interesting film to contrast with Tango and Cash. And Dash, what are your thoughts just in terms of like watching these two movies back to back, both big budget buddy cop movies?
No, 100%. There's a lot of themes, just their overall dynamic, the amount of humor between it, and also you have two very quippy people. Like we were, on the Tango and Cash, we're saying like one person never stood back and allowed the other one to
Mhm.
do it. This one was very similar. There wasn't someone who was like the silent person while the other one drove the conversation, but you can just see what a difference actual funny dialogue, a believable level of chemistry, a growing characterization of these people who, like, there's the monologue of the backstories and they
Mhm.
grow from point A to point B. I never got that from Tango and Cash, of this like budding friendship. It just seemed like we're at this speed from the first chapter of the movie to the credits. This one was that, but
This
I just
growth.
felt like so betterly done. It works for me in this one.
Interesting point to or counterpoint towards what you're saying about the chemistry between the two leads in this film. Conversely, so yeah, you can see the chemistry, and I'm not sure how much of that is due to the writing or the acting, But the chemistry between these two is like much better and kind of more believed and earned than in Tango and Cash. Even though in reality, in real life, the actors in this one, the two leads, Damon Wayans and Bruce Willis, hated working with each other. It was a horrible experience. Apparently, Bruce Willis is a well-known curmudgeon. A lot of people have a lot of bad experiences, especially in this time, working with him because of his ego. He used to do apparently weird things like run around the set costumed or disguised to ask crew members how they felt about Bruce Willis. Also, keeping in mind that this was a movie that he made immediately after a terrible movie, Hudson Hawk. So he really was like doing the most at this point. So apparently Damon Wayans just really hated working with him. But apparently Kurt Russell and Stallone had a great working relationship with each other on the set of Tango and Cash. Right.
That's
And
cool.
so I think
Make a reality show, guys, because that did not
well
come across on the screen.
no, but what I'm getting at is that maybe not having that, not having that fire, right, uh, made it tamed the chemistry between Stallone and Russell
No,
because they weren't like
Well,
for me,
well,
I'm saying the writing, like what they were
writing.
doing, them growing, like, there's no amount of like backstage politics other than like, wow, someone's performance was bad, like
Mm-hmm.
in terms of the things they were doing in the movie and the lines that they were saying, it completely worked for me. Where the script, like the script for this worked for me, where
mhm.
the script for Tango and Cash, like I don't know what would have, like I don't know. Yeah, I know that Sylvester Stallone wasn't the most charismatic in it, but I don't even know if they got someone else. Just what was
If it
happening
would have
would
been
have,
possible anyway,
yeah,
what they had. No,
exactly.
Yeah,
100%,
I love
100%.
I love the script to The Last Boy Scout. There's so many quotable lines, and especially like the way it's also delivered. I think Bruce Willis is so funny in this movie.
Can I guess what your favorite line is?
Go
Can I just
ahead.
take one guess what your favorite line is? I want to hear you scream. Play some rap music.
That's two lines.
Was
Okay, but
no, what was the
but
response?
I think Carlos, to your point, the whole point of this movie, or any buddy cop movie, there's supposed to be tension, and they're not supposed to
Mm-hmm.
like each other, right? Until like
Mm-hmm.
maybe like the final frame. So I think the fact that
You're right.
Bruce Willis and Damon Wayans didn't get along, I think was
That's
perfect.
tough.
Because they are trying to one up each other. Whereas, like, if I think maybe Kurt Russell and Stallone had more of a mutual respect. But just going back to the script itself, I think the plot and everything else is secondary. Is just sort of the banter that goes back and forth between these two. Because as I was rewatching it, it reminded me that when I go back and search out clips for this movie, it's usually the dialogue scenes and not the action scenes,
Hmm.
because this is
Okay.
more of a police thriller type of detective noir movie than it is sort of this like full-blown action movie.
I'm glad you guys caught that. I'm glad you keep
Excuse me.
both of you have already referenced kind of noir aspects because one of the things that occurred to me, and again, I don't know if I'm necessarily looking for this kind of thing, was that this is definitely 80s, I'm sorry, 90s kind of take on a noir detective story. Like again, the grizzled detective smoking a bunch of cigarettes, and even though everything wasn't bathed in shadows, it definitely gave me those like 50s detective novel vibes, and even down to some of the orchestration and the music. But yeah, I don't want to get ahead of myself. I'm sorry, Tyler.
Yeah, no problem. Well, let's talk about the performances since we're talking about the actors now. I think this film rests on the shoulders of Bruce Willis. Damon Wayans certainly helps, but I think I haven't rewatched a lot of Bruce Willis movies recently, but think this was maybe one of the first instances where he's playing that sort of grizzled, kind of mellowed out, world weary kind of character. Because if you remember the original Die Hard movie, he's not like that. And in
Mm-hmm.
Hudson Hawk, he's also much more animated, and here he's just much more beaten down. But what did you, Dash? What did you think of just the performances across the board? Because obviously there's Bruce Willis and Damon Wayans, but there's also an amazing cast as well.
Well, I think that to your point, it was something new that like Bruce Willis was doing, but then from watching later Bruce Willis movies, it seemed like
Became
like
his
he's
his
done
MO.
this before.
Hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
to go back and see this, it felt very familiar, not a bad thing, but like he seemed very similar to how he is even in the Die Hard with a Vengeance, right? Like tired, grizzled cop, and then also going with another Shane Black movie, which is Lethal Weapon, very like Murtaugh esque.
Hmm.
I didn't think that it was like treading new waters, but he hit the notes that he definitely needed to. I thought that Damon Wayans had the comedy stuff down, but they gave him a little bit too many drama moments that just he was not able to
Yes.
deal with, like
Yeah,
the
absolutely.
monologue that he has about like the painkillers, where
Uh
I was
huh.
like,
Yeah.
Uh huh.
this isn't working. This isn't working for me.
Yep. I'm glad I'm not the only one.
Yeah, but the for the rest of it, I like I like the cast. I don't think anyone, and I think that this is kind of I say this often with some of them, but I think, like, it's one of those, they got the assignment, so the cast of baddies were what they were. I don't think anyone like really stole the show from the villain part, but again, it's about these, the buddy cops, and I thought that they did a fine job.
Carlos, I know you spotted a bunch of familiar faces that you wanted to talk about throughout the film.
Yeah, I mean, there was this movie definitely seemed riddled with a lot of cameos. Us having conversation before starting recording, we each individually caught a different cameo that the other two of us hadn't caught. So again, for me, the one that I caught was Billy Blanks in the beginning as the football guy the footballer who shoots himself in the head. I think.
Hmm.
Um, we know Billy Blanks from Tybo specifically, I think mostly, but we know him from other B movies when he was a B movie actor. Kind of before that, you caught Telly, I believe it was Eddie Griffith, a comedian
In the strip
in the
club.
strip club sequence, and Dash, who's the one that you
Oh,
caught? I'm sorry.
James Gandolfini,
Oh, Gandalf, the
Tony
Yeah.
biggest one,
Soprano
maybe the
himself.
biggest
And
one.
did he even have a line, or is he
No, he
just?
did not, but
Oh
he
wow.
was
Okay.
around. But I assume he did such a good job because he would later work with Tony Scott again on True Romance, where he would have a much larger role with speaking lines. So good to see him. Rest in peace.
Yeah, well,
Other
speaking
good.
of that, speaking of henchmen, there's just like so many henchmen in this movie, and all of them have some funny kind of personality quirk, which I thought
Mhm.
was endearing watching this over again. Because usually, some of the movies that we've been watching on the show, the henchmen are just nondescript guys in trench coats and sometimes have like a ponytail. And here, these guys are much more colorful. The standout to me was Kim Coates,
Coates, yeah,
who's the one that does the "If you touch me again, I'll kill you."
Yeah.
I
yeah.
just think he's just he's so unlikable, and he's just like a lovable bad guy, even in that little brief scene that he has.
Mhm.
And I
Right.
think really steals that scene.
Yeah, we
And
have.
then obviously Halle Berry in one of her early roles, Danielle Harris for those Halloween 4 fans.
That
Yeah, I
was a
wanted to
good
give a
year
shout out to her. I
for
thought she
Halle
was
Berry
really
too.
good.
Sorry, go ahead.
I think that Danielle Harris did a really good job. And again, in doing some of the research for this, we looked into it, and apparently, this is the film that she credits as being the most enjoyable on-set experience of anything that she had done. And I thought she did a pretty good job at what she had to write with. I think some of the scenes with her were a little bit over the top. I can't just imagine any woman being, oh, in any daughter. I think she's supposed to be like 11 or 12 years old, just kind of being like, "Fuck you, dad! You're such a fuck
Yeah,
up."
it's
But I mean, again, she was working with what she had. Also, quick shout out to Bruce McGill, who we remember from Time Cop.
Mhm.
Playing the sleazy best friend who's banging his wife, which is the worst, absolute worst, and Noble Willington, as the like main baddie, who I thought was also um, as cartoony as he was supposed to be written out to play. I thought that was a well played part. And last shout out is going to go to Dit Buckus because I haven't heard the name Dit Buckus in decades, and I
Oh
forgot
yeah.
how
I
hilarious it is.
remember Damon Wayans making fun of him when they were doing In Living Color and they were doing the Men on Film thing, and they were
Mm.
referring to his name. Yeah.
Give that two
All the
snaps
snaps
and a
up.
turkey.
And of course, I also want to mention the lovely Chelsea Field, Scott Bakula's wife in this, who was, in a bunch of movies in the 80s that I saw, like Masters of the Universe, where she played Tila. But yeah,
That
no,
was Tila. Wow. Okay.
that is,
Yeah.
yeah, that was Tila.
Oh, look at that.
All
Okay.
right. So let's talk about Tony Scott now, the director. Directing this, and I just feel this has so many trademarks of his style. It's like so slick and polished and over the top, but it does have his signature on it. But Dash, your thoughts on Tony Scott in general and just
Yeah,
his work on this
he's
film?
always doing it. I'm a fan. I like how he portrays the city. It's not like overly stylized and like a Michael Mann, which who I also love his visuals, but it definitely has a tone, and it does feel like it felt 90 as fuck, this movie, and not in like a bad way, not like with the soundtrack, but just like shot choices, the way that he fills a frame of like the last scene I think about, which is like such a staple of a time. We have all the squad cars, and the wife runs up who just got to the scene. It just felt like a staple movie that was made with, I don't want to say it's formulaic, because but it hits all of the notes of what a blockbuster, like if I went to the movies in 91, this would have been what I wanted to see. And the performances were good. It wasn't the most action packed, which typically isn't what I take from Tony Scott movie, but I thought that just the portrayal of LA, the moments where someone is supposed to feel something, I think he always relays that, like when there's a moment of tension, when there's desperation, when like just little choices. I loved how like Damon Wayans, when he goes into his monologue about his son, he's like looking out the window with
Mhm.
Bruce Willis behind him, and then for the last line he turns, and it was very like it was overly dramatic and melodramatic at times, and I love that he doesn't shy away from it, because like at the beginning of the movie with the like affair and stuff, I was like, okay, this movie has to win me over, at this point, and because it was just too much at the beginning. But it did, like, with those melodramatic moments, but just looking at some of the stuff, like the way he portrayed the beginning of the film to set the tone, like the locker room, all these blue lights, the dimming of the crowd, also just the scope that he had to work with of the large field, like it felt like such a big movie. And with
All that
the
rain and everything, all those choices.
That was the
yeah,
rainiest football game to
Right.
ever be played in the
ever.
history of
That
man.
would be a
It was
huge
like
hazard,
Noah's
but
Noah's Ark was filling up, and we're like, we're gonna
mhm,
get this last game in because
mhm.
you know what I'm saying, it's football. It's Friday night football.
Hell yeah. So
Yeah,
I was really a big fan of how this was put together. I thought a lot of positives were brought to the top. I didn't have too much that turned me away from it.
yeah, Carlos.
I
Thoughts on Tony
feel like
Scott in general? Are you a fan?
yeah, no, I'm absolutely a fan of both
Mhm.
Scots, right? Both of the Scots.
Yeah.
I'm a huge fan of. I was a big fan of the direction in this, especially because I don't necessarily love some of the writing, and I know that he had a very difficult time kind of making this. He had some issues with both Joel Silver, I think, was the
Mhm.
producer,
Mhm.
as well as Willis having um, unwarranted expectations of over control of how the movie was going to go, and apparently it was a big slog. So in order for him to, I know under those circumstances, as we saw with Tango and Cash, it could really mean the death knell to like a good movie. And so with those things with those things in consideration, the way he was able to pull this together with some things that are in the writing we could talk about later just didn't make a whole lot of sense to me. I think they were trying really hard to make um, Willis the anti-hero, which is fine, but again, to Anthony's point in the beginning, he's just so unlikable and just mean to
Really?
people. Yeah, I found
Oh,
him
really?
like
I found him very endearing. I fell in love with him immediately.
really
Yeah.
he was just rude and a
As
dick to
as a
anybody.
character, as a character in a movie, I just love that. He was basically like Al Bundy,
Yeah, but also like his reaction is like, okay, you're cheating on me, and I'm pretty sure because I'm a detective. So even though you offered to just open the door to show me who the person is that you're cheating, no, the door stays closed. I'm just gonna pull my gun out and shoot a hole in this wall, in the next 3 seconds. It just seemed like, and he's like mad at the dog and shit that's outside. Like,
yeah.
if you get the hell out of here, dog. Like, I just. But again, I mean, I understand that some of that too was, I know that it was Willis trying to play into kind of get back to the gritty roots that he was kind of
Mhm.
known for from Die Hard after taking that turn from Hudson Hawk. And
Yeah.
I also understand that he was Tony Scott's idea for this was, again, to harken back to those noir films. So I'm just saying that I'm a big fan of the fact of what he was able to pull off, given the constraints of having an over controlling lead and an over controlling producer, both at the height of their stardom and the power of their control. If you look at some of the behind the scenes stuff that we looked up, he was being forced to make changes to the script at the threat of being fired and forfeiting his pay completely for this. So he kind of made this under duress.
Mm-hmm.
And with those considerations, I'm really surprised at how effective it still manages to be. So I'm a big fan.
Okay. Well, in terms of direction, I think he balances the comedy really well with the action and the light moments. There's a lot of like light moments and black humor with, you know, some of the melodramatic stuff. I think the yeah, as we mentioned before, I think Damon Wayans kind of is not necessarily a dramatic actor, and it kind of shows in some of those scenes. But
I
yeah,
laughed in that scene. I laughed.
Yeah,
I was laughing when he started going. I'm literally laughing at him. I had the best game of my life.
Oh,
what's up with this dead wife and kids, God?
Right.
I can't. Bro,
But to see that, and that the thing is, on the other way, that was why I loved it. Like, and I liked how it was. I mean, I don't know if they found it funny or intentional, but I just like those moments that became kind of the things that you think about. If I was like, oh, a buddy cop 90s, like this plays so into Loaded National Lampoon's Loaded Weapon,
Right.
where, you know, it's a lot of this turned up to 11 because, you know, the tragic backstory, they both have one. When Damon Wayans finds out that Bruce Willis used to be a fan of his, like it is.
I like that too.
It's over the top. Like it is. It is a little ridiculous, but it matched the world of this movie where the action lived up to that. You know, he's on the field. Without giving jumping too far ahead, but like one of my favorite moments was the sniper scene on the field, and it's like that visual of, you know, the football blocking a bullet is right on par with, you know, having a monologue while looking at the pool and turning around with, like, you know, one line of you know, just to like type that scene back together. So I thought it was consistent in that regard.
Yeah, no, I think just the chances he's willing to take, because he could have just made this a straight out comedy, but he's willing to invest the emotion into those scenes. So like one of my favorite scenes is definitely the scene when Bruce Willis discovers that you know, there's someone he figures there's someone hiding in the closet, and that's sort of like a classic gaslighting scene by his wife.
Yeah.
Like, you want me to open the door? And I thought that scene is brilliant in terms of just setting up the relationship and the tension between him and his wife, and then also just the establishing character for Bruce Willis. So he's kind of off the rails a little bit of Mel Gibson from Lethal Weapon, right? Without not so suicidal, but yeah, I just love I love the character that Bruce Willis created, and I think that was something that was missing in Tango and Cash, where Sylvester Stallone's character was just a guy in a suit that like read the Wall Street Journal. So
and said sugar is up when he was looking at the stocks.
Right.
Also,
right,
I misspoke
exactly.
earlier. I meant of Riggs. I called Mel Gibson.
Yeah. I made that mistake too. Yeah, I mean, I guess so. I guess you listen. You're right. At the end, I was rooting for him. I just found the initial hit of him, our first introduction with him, just the way he's talking to his wife, the way he's interacting with the kids. Like those kids were putting like mice on him. It was just overly. I could tell he was hungover, and like I guess when we're hungover, we're our worst selves. But I just felt like he was like overdoing it. But again, to its credit, that did make the change towards the end of the movie when you start to see them respect each other more, and they're actually like kind of saying nice things to each other, even as little as it is. Then it feels like more distance has happened. So it does make it effective. But at first, it just came off as like you're just being a dick to be a dick to people, and every line you say, like, the first thing you hear, oh, she's gonna be having sex in the next year, like talking about his daughter, and you're like, wow, that's the first thing.
No,
I just find him
for me,
unlikable.
the first line that really establishes his character is when after he gets out of the car, goes into his office, and then he's talking to his buddy on the phone, and he's like, I might have fucked a squirrel to death last night. I think that
Yeah.
just kind of captures the character. He just
Yeah,
gives no
yeah.
fuck,
He's like, "What are you doing?
you
I'm
know.
gonna sit around here and smoke some cigarettes, and
Right.
which is
Also, by
cool
the
because that's what
time
I
you
like to
meet,
do."
And I
by the
think
time
that
you meet
I think
him,
that's the brilliance of the movie and direction. That the movie is kind of it's very meta. It knows, and given the fact that this comes after Lethal Weapon 1 and 2, and Shane Black was sort of the progenitor of all that. The movie knows it's like the characters know that they're basically in a movie because they even refer, oh, you must be the bad guys and things like that.
yeah, you
So
have to have a one-liner
so they're
when
definitely
you
winking at the camera in a very subtle way. But yeah, all that kind of stuff they talk about, all the cliches, right? And I think that's Shane Black kind of deconstructing the whole that whole buddy cop trope.
Yeah, it
Um,
it definitely feels I mean, even like, his first shot when you meet him, he's, not just passed out. He's not just an alcoholic. He's to the point that you can put a dead squirrel on and the kids are fucking with him. And that's where I feel like all of those things they're so consistent across the thing. Because if you point to one thing where it's like, yeah, this is kind of dumb and ridiculous, and it's like, my friend, I got 50 more for you, for the next
yeah,
hour and
it's
a half.
very consistent. I think that's where the film, the script saved the movie because the script, I think, there's so many sort of setup and payoffs in the movie that I think you could mess some things around in the film and you could still get something that is telling a cohesive story.
Another one of my favorite lines was, "Hey, you read much?" And he goes, "My subscription to Jugs expired."
Yeah, so there's all those great lines and also just the weird character interactions because like there's at least two instances where the bad guys just like are stupid enough to let like Bruce Willis do stand-up comedy in front of him.
Yeah,
That's, like,
yeah,
crazy.
yeah.
Right? The
That's
first
everyone
one is the
laughing.
guy in the alleyway where he can't
Yeah.
help himself but let Bruce Willis finish his jokes. And then of course in the forest where
Yeah,
he does
got
the
a full
puppet show.
audience.
Yeah. And that's the funny thing with the Danielle Harris character because like I think she's supposed to be like 13 and sort of like into boys now, but she's carrying like this like stuffed animal around, and it's like okay, she's supposed to be either 13 or like 6,
Yeah, yeah. Pick
and
one.
you kind of just roll with it, Otherwise, you
Mhm.
wouldn't have the scene with him with Bruce Willis and Furry Tom. But we were talking about the action earlier, and obviously in terms of just like explosions, it has that doesn't have a lot of like big long extended fights or gun battles or anything like that, but just your thoughts on the overall fights and stunts in the movie.
I think they were minimal at the start to get you through. And I remember like being kind of halfway. I was like, this isn't like a shoot punch kick like action movie. Cause even though at that point what I was thinking about was like, okay, there was some stuff, right? Like the intro is crazy. That's
Mhm.
insane start to
There's
a
a lot of
movie.
shooting in the intro. Yeah.
Yeah, so that was insane. And then I felt it died down for a while, right? Like you have that quick little moment where Halle Berry dies and, it's a little bit of action, but it's like, all on one corner. Then there's a little bit more where, there's like a quick little car chase and stuff like that. But then I thought by the last like half hour, we're in shoot punch kick territory. And I thought that it was cool. It built up to it. By the time we got there, I was waiting for, a much more of a crescendo, especially as they spend time in the movie setting up all these pieces, the football field, the owner, the henchmen, and who's alive and who's not, and you expect them all to collide at this point. And I didn't think that it disappointed in terms of being on the because opens on a football field, but with that, like if it happened anywhere else, it would have felt like a dud. And it gave you what it promised, and horses on the field, bullets, footballs knocking down bullets, people getting just messed up. There were two dogs who were completely innocent who exploded
Right.
when the owner opened up the bomb
I did
briefcase.
notice that too.
The neighbor's
So
dog lived in the beginning.
yeah,
Yeah, because it was running towards the car in the beginning, but yeah, it survived that. But too
yeah.
bad for the Dobermans. Oh, that's
Yes.
my friend Yoshi.
So I actually wrote a note. Is Telly's house haunted? Because I saw Slender Man go by, and I put a timestamp because I was going to ask you about it
Yes.
after we were done, because I thought we were going to have a Blair Witch moment.
Yeah.
Go to the timestamp, 20 minutes and 13 seconds.
Yeah, then there's no one there when you watch it.
And it was just me.
What are you talking
I
about?
do have a house guest today. But Carlos, your thoughts on just the action, the shoot punch kick quality of the movie?
Yeah, so I think that this is a great example of meh. And I don't necessarily mean that in a derogatory way, because we've recently had action movies that were more action based that were just so bad that we had to point it out. I felt like in this sequence, for this instance, the action was means to an end. There was nothing that was offensive. The thing that I felt like was deficient, but there was anything that was like superlative or like really, really excellent. So the action actually helped me change the way I saw this movie. I was expecting, because again, we're talking about a movie he did after Die Hard, which has excellent, really great action. And as we got past some of the action sequences in this, I started to realize again that I don't think the intention for this was to really be an action movie in the sense that that Die Hard is. It's not about that. Again, this is supposed to be more of a buddy cop and a kind of an investigation kind of story. So it serviced the plot. I wasn't offended or impressed either way. I know it's kind of a bland answer, but it was meh for me.
Yeah, no, I felt the same way. I don't go to this for its action scenes. I don't revisit any of the action scenes. I revisit the other types of scenes. But I thought, just in terms of Tony Scott as a director, as a big Hollywood director, like all the explosions look beautiful. They're really well orchestrated.
Except for that explosion at the end of the house.
Right.
Remember?
Well,
that mad looked terrible.
Composite, yeah. But in terms of all the practical, well, it's 91, so everything's almost practical. But all the exploding cars and cars flying into pools and all that kind of car chases and all that stuff. I think it had this really nice polish to it. And then
a unique 80s gunshot sound, which is unique to these movies.
But I do take exception to one thing, Carlos. I think there is one memorable action piece in this movie, which is the very end where Milo gets pureed by the helicopter blades.
Yeah, that was dope. That's fair. You're right. That was dope. I can't be mad at you. You're right. That was dope. The helicopter just happened to be hovering directly above.
Right.
and how do you respond to that?
Everything is like silent after that. It's like that you don't hear the helicopter anymore, and it's just kind of funny how I remember Bruce Willis dancing at the end.
Yeah, the jig. No, which again brought the line, for a dancer, he's a damn good detective.
Yeah.
which to be fair, I think was one of the lines that didn't land. Like I looked at it and I was like, wah wah. But yeah, you're right.
I think Damon. Surprisingly, I think like Damon Wayans' lines don't land as well as Bruce Willis's like comebacks and quips, and I think that's just maybe due to Damon Wayans' like lack of experience, because this was like a year after like In Living Color hit the scene, and that was like an instant sort of hit on TV, but he wasn't like a movie star yet.
Well, you're looking at, and for me, I'm looking at Bruce Willis as former Secret Service, who's now a private eye. I'm like, damn, that's Damon Wayans. Like, I know his character is, former NFL player turned, gambling, disgraced player, but I mean, he's still Damon Wayans, and
he was Kenny Powers, kind of. I felt like before Kenny Powers.
Yeah, so he was less it was less the situation for him, where it's like, here's a cop, action hero cop, and then here's comedic side, sidekick.
Yeah, I'm thinking about when they threw him off the highway, and that whole bit where he's like, I'm fine, I'm a professional, and then he like slumps over, didn't really hit.
It's tough for the hey, I don't do this and now I'm doing it to to match up, like in the like Rush Hour context, that would be like Chris Tucker, right? Like he's the fish out of water in the action part where those jokes kind of land.
But he's also much more flamboyant, right? Like
yeah,
right? I think he's trying to do like straight
I have
line,
expensive pants, Prince, ow, like
yeah.
it was pretty minimal, but I think it wasn't so much like punchline though, but like I did get laughs from Damon Wayans in relation to Bruce Willis. So
Mm-hmm.
that's where, if it was only him, just like, see, that's I think the difference with Tango and Cash. The jokes didn't line, and also their interaction didn't get the humor either. So it was
Mhm.
just
Yeah.
neither. Where in this one, I thought the Bruce Willis jokes landed, their relationship landed, and then Damon Wayans wasn't really like, haha, but it wasn't, it
That
wasn't everything. There was
Yeah,
still two out of
it's
three.
funny that
funny.
it's almost that Damon Wayans would be the straight man almost to some
He is
degree.
basically the straight man,
He's
because you
kind of
think
the
about
straight
that
man in this.
scene, right after Halle Berry, which is funny now when I watch it again, because after Halle Berry gets killed, they're in the police station and they're sitting next to each other, and Bruce Willis starts cracking jokes about
Yeah,
Damon
no,
Wayans.
it's insensitive as fuck.
Yeah.
Right. But that's a great example where it's like, in that scene, Damon Wayans is the straight man, Bruce Willis is basically doing all the jokes, and Damon Wayans doesn't have a comeback,
Mhm.
Whereas in Tango and Cash, like, no one could
They
really
would
get
have
the
had
last
one.
word, But yeah,
And also, he
that's
can't really be that overly confident, like, because he's fish out of water. It has to be a level of like fear, right? Like, he can't
Mhm.
be overly, confident throwing one-liners the way they were trying to in Tango and Cash. I thought some of those things kind of played up, like where the convertible flies off, and he's like, "Do you have any other ideas?" Because that was like his whole plan. Kind of situation. I liked
The
when he
bomb
told,
shit was kind of funny, right? Like the
yeah,
BOM,
that was
and he
like
was
a
like,
cool moment. Yeah,
I
so I
was like,
thought like they at the moments where they were together, or there was something else to play off of, like even when he pulls the shotgun in the player, like it wasn't like
yeah,
that was like a pretty funny moment, because you saw the
yeah, that
guy
was a
and it's
dope
like,
line.
Well,
yeah,
yeah,
so
because that's a recurring. That was also a great, like, there's a lot of recurring things in the film, and they set up that guy in the very beginning. Where
Mhm.
when I watch it again, when I
He's a
watch it again
murderer.
now, which
He's
is
a
funny
fucking
now, which
rapist
is
and a murderer.
well, it's funny now because at that scene, I always thought that the football player was alone with the model or
Okay,
whatever
caught it.
girl, but now I see that there's actually other people, like, and also
Yeah,
women
right,
and
sitting
who are just
around,
cool with it.
and they're
yeah,
just like letting it happen. And that guy, fun fact, is one of the goons in Rapid Fire.
Oh
He
wow.
was like the one of the big guys. But um,
But
so
by the way, just a note on that. I have notes when I watch a thing, and literally, the note I wrote was, "So in this world, dudes just be drowning bitches."
I do
So
want to
literally
say,
from my notes.
the one note that I had was Damon Wayans got his money's worth in this movie, because he was slobbing Halle Berry down, and
Yo,
like
talk about a
Halle,
hard day's work,
Halle
bro.
Berry's
And
in
he
like
was
one
married at the time,
scene.
I think, too.
Yeah, he was
Yo,
like,
dude,
I'm
there's
acting over
a
here.
I forget which comedian it was. Who's the dude from Will Ferrell? He talks about sometimes in he's married, and sometimes in the movies he's got to go on scene and just like make out for the whole
mm,
day with like a beautiful actress. And he says it's like kind of weird because it's part of his job. And he'll just come home and his wife will be like, "Hey, honey, how was work today?" And he'll go, "Nothing." like Damon Wayans, what'd you do today for work? I just made out with Halle Berry at her height for all
Yeah,
day and
I
got
will
paid
and
for
say
it.
I
though,
saw an
I will say
unscripted
Halle
boob
Berry's
grab.
performance in this film is very green. I would not expect that this actress would end up winning an Oscar, because she's just yeah, her
Yeah,
delivery was definitely not very convincing in terms of her line
she
delivery.
had delivery. I'm sorry, I didn't know. I hadn't noticed.
No.
Definitely a bot. Can we agree there was definitely a body double in the strip tease?
Well, that's
You
the
never
funny
see her
thing.
body and her face.
That's where there's another parallel with Tango and Cash, and I just gotta wonder, like, if they were trying to emulate that in some way, because here's another scene where, like, one of the love interests
That's
happens to
true.
be an exotic dancer, right?
Mhm.
Um, so let's talk about the music. I was very surprised that Michael Kamen did the score, who did the score for Highlander. But
Hmm.
now, I don't.
Thought it
There was
was
nothing
Queen.
memorable in this, at least to me, with the music in this, other than obviously the opening song for the movie.
God, yes.
And I never understood that opening song. Do they play football on Fridays, or is that why it's like kind of funny?
I
Or
I thought I saw something. I thought I saw something in the research. I can't remember exactly what it said, but I think that was the actual if that's not the actual song that was played for football, that was the actual people or musicians. Like that was official for the time. People were like, "Oh, this is like football," and I think it's like Monday Night Football. I don't
Yeah,
think it's
there's Monday
Friday.
Night
Yeah.
Football, but I
And,
never
Yeah,
heard
and
of
I think
Friday
that
Night
they did the
Football.
song for Monday Night Football, but they just changed
Oh,
it to suit this. But
well,
it
the
was
intro
like,
looked like a parody of the Open for
mhm,
the football show. So
yeah,
even the way the
yeah.
open credits are, they have like little graphics, very 90s with the color palettes and like little icons when it's like, music by and written by. So I think they were just like really leaning in, which is kind of cool, right? Because they do a little bit of the
yeah,
bait and switch. You set the table of what a football night would be. You think you're getting, not that I mean, people are, I'm sure they're not thinking that they're getting a football
No.
game, but the way that they go is like leaning into all the presentation cliches and trying to mimic that Monday Night Football feel, because
And I
that
think
I don't
also
think
too
it
the
ever came
idea
out on
that
Friday.
the one of the major things about the whole movie is that like the ratings for football is dying. Well, I mean,
hmm
you put football on a Friday night, people got shit to do on Friday nights. So, but and for the music, for me specifically, there wasn't anything particular that stood out except for the note where I think it was the music that helped me come to the realization that this was going for noir, kind of like a LA noir, presentation, because some of the composition just had that very. I think there's like a lot of harp music, right, and a lot of brass, which is kind of typical of movies of that era and of that genre. So if nothing else, it definitely led to me having a feel for what the movie was trying to accomplish. And I guess to some degree, some of the best scores you shouldn't notice necessarily.
hmm
It should just kind of naturally flow into what's going on screen. So I think it was
yeah.
effective, if nothing else.
I guess because Michael Kamen, I associate him so much with Highlander, and that's where the music is like in your face,
Bombastic.
like
It was almost like a music. That was more like a music video, almost,
that
right?
was
And
a music
and a lot of
video.
Queen music, which.
Yeah, totally. Which makes the movie, So I'm
Mhm.
curious how they're gonna remake that without Queen, because I think those two things just kind of go together.
Even the
But
TV show, right? Yeah, you're right.
yeah, so let's talk about reaction to the movie. So when this opened, it got mixed reviews, and it also underperformed at the box office because, as Carlos, you were saying, the producers, the studio, they were expecting this to be sort of like at the level of Die Hard, because this was sort
Mhm.
of essentially the follow up to Die Hard.
Most expensive
Um,
script, biggest
right.
actor, biggest producer, great
Big up and
director.
coming, TV star in Damon Wayans, right? So, however, according to Wikipedia, retrospective reviews have been a lot more positive, and the film has developed a cult following in the since its release. So, but at the time of the release, Variety described the plot as a haze of barely connected storylines about political corruption, pro football gambling, infidelity, and blackmail, where all the questions are answered by another car chase, smashing someone in the face, or shooting someone in the forehead.
I
It's
mean,
always funny because when
stop
I
being
when
so
I read
stuffy,
when I
guys.
read reviews
Yeah,
like
not
that, though,
wrong.
Being
those
a
are the kinds
hater,
of
man.
reviews that make me want to see a movie, because I'm like, oh, I would love to
Yeah,
see a
that's what
movie
I
that
want to do. That's what
resolves
I want to
problems
see.
like that. Yeah.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
And
Well,
Roger
that,
Ebert at the time, he gave it 3 stars out of 4, saying it was a superb example of what it is: a glossy, skillful, cynical, smart, utterly corrupt, and vilely misogynistic action thriller. Some
I think that's
backhanded,
fair.
some backhanded compliments there.
I think, but
And
I think that's fair. I actually agree with that. I think that's a
okay,
solid
and then
review.
here's the more extreme one from the Washington Post at the time. It says they called it the filmic equivalent of a hate crime. It's mindless anti-civilization formula for boys who can't
Wow.
get enough. Wow.
written
Wow.
by a
Okay.
woman. No, I don't know.
I did. Thank,
I
thank
don't know.
you, thank
I
you.
don't know. I don't
And
know
if,
about it, but
subscribers, if you just get at Anthony, if you have any
yeah.
questions, Dash
No,
Dash
but
is
it
the
does
one.
make
Don't
sense.
get at
Like
us.
going back to Roger Ebert's the misogyny. I was like, I could see that. I could see a point. So
Yeah.
it's definitely a boys'
Yeah.
movie. Even got it right in the name.
It literally says it in the
Yeah.
title.
Yeah. So the retrospective reviews, though, have been much more kind. So in 2022, Rolling Stone included The Last Boy Scout on the best movies of Bruce Willis, and called it and said it's the neo-noir thriller Last Boy Scout is on
Noir.
some level
Neo noir.
trash, bookended by wildly over-the-top action sequences at football stadiums. Elevated not only by director Tony Scott's self-awareness of how ridiculous it all is, but by the sheer force of Willis's performance as a disgraced Secret Service agent turned seedy private detective.
Telly, did you write that?
No, I wish I did. But
I feel like, but it's point out, it's spot on. I 100% couldn't agree more. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, and then let's listen to what the people had to say. So on IMDb, I wanted to look up some recent reviews, right, and see what people had to say. So this is a review from Adrian. I'll just call him Adrian from October of 2020. It's a 1-star review. He calls it a loser all the way. Willis plays Willis, and for his bad luck, his wife in the movie seems to be Demi faithful, sleeping with his best chum and lying about it. Willis appears to be a detective fallen on hard days, but then we see that he lives in a fairly sumptuous place. His foul mouth of a daughter makes drawings about Satan Claus, so you can tell that rating this family dysfunctional is a gross understatement. The best pal banging his wife catches a ticket upstairs when his car blows up and Willis realizes that foul play is at hand. But that phases him not at all. He might as well be sauntering on the set of Die Hard.
Yeah, I mean, look, $500 is $500.
Yeah.
Hey, man. Hey, so listen,
And he was banging his wife.
So in terms of, it's funny now that you brought up where this sits in the pantheon of Bruce Willis films. I was, again, when I went into this, really thinking about this in terms of like his follow up to Die Hard in the action sequence. So I made myself an order, and I think the order is Die Hard 1, Die Hard 2, Die Hard 3, The Last Boy Scout, Die Hard 4. What do you guys think?
I think Die Hard 3 is better than 2.
Yes,
right at the beginning.
Really?
I go 1 and 3 as well.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right
okay,
out the
that's
gate, we
interesting.
got beef.
And I feel like this is
Okay.
almost like a precursor to Die Hard with a Vengeance because of the buddy angle, and then also the way Bruce Willis plays his character in this film is very similar.
Very similar.
We gotta chat offline about this Die Hard ranking.
Okay. Well, we're gonna bring that up later in the quick
yeah,
shot.
that's what I'm saying.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
But let me
Sorry.
read one more review, and this comes to us. This is a 10 out of 10 review on IMDb from Janice Livy, March 2024. He calls it the best of Bruce Willis. I know how good Die Hard and Lucky Number 11 were, but in my humble opinion, this is the best film of Bruce Willis's career. Why? It simply has everything. For those who like buddy films, the relationship between Bruce and ex-quarterback Joe Dix. For those who like noir films, like me, Bruce's Joe Hollenbach does a great job of channeling Dick Powell or Humphrey Bogart as a put-down hero detective. Then there's the puppet scene with him and daughter Chelsea Field. They got that wrong. That is laugh out loud funny. Spoilers ahead. Then there is the scene of Bruce after stopping the hitman doing a dance, and Bill Medley's rockin' Friday Night's a Great Night for Football. Basically has everything and is Bruce Willis's best film.
I don't agree with that, but I love the enthusiasm of especially the Lucky Number 11 praise. I didn't think that would be as high
I've never seen that one.
You've never seen Lucky Number 11? Okay,
no.
that's interesting.
And before we start to wrap things up, I do want to just talk about Bruce Willis a little bit, because I think, like, as we're rewatching these movies again, and even at the time, he was sort of an outlier when it comes to action heroes, because he wasn't like sort of this muscle bound guy the way like Arnold Schwarzenegger,
it's more of an everyman superhero,
and
right?
Dolph Lundgren even was, and then he also wasn't sort of the martial arts guys like Steven Seagal and Van Damme and those other dudes. So he had an interesting niche that he sort of like carried throughout his career. But just what are your thoughts, in terms of Bruce Willis as an action star?
I like his place as guy having a bad day who has to face odds that are way above him. That was his thing was vulnerability. He was like the only balding action star. He was not ripped like everyone else. Just always like the first Bruce Willis movie I probably saw in theaters was Die Hard with a Vengeance. And I mean, like, between that and the iconic him walking on the glass with no shoes. Like, I think that he brought that like vulnerability to a person that no one else, not no one else. That's a crazy statement. But that Arnold Schwarzenegger, Seagal, like these are people who
They
could
didn't do
fight.
it.
The only thing that put them at like a lower odds was just more people, right? Like they, even if you looked at a movie like Commando, there was no one that could like fuck with him.
Fuck with him.
Like
Yeah.
it was just maybe Bill
Hmm.
Duke, and he's like not even like the big heavy bad. So I liked Bruce Willis's point. But that I guess also makes it feel a little noir, right? Like
Mhm.
he's usually smart, has some level of detective skills, or able to outsmart the people. Die Hard is like, his situation awareness and his ability to outmaneuver these people who are looking for him. Die Hard with a Vengeance, same thing. He's trying to track down this guy who's playing games with him, and they got to get a step ahead of him. And he's at odds with, again, these people who are know more than he does at that moment, while he has to do other stuff. So I like the relatability that he
Mhm.
had with it. I liked his ability. I think, and it works with this movie too, where the action and things that they're very situational. Where I think other action movies don't feel that way. It's like you put Sylvester Stallone in setting with machine gun, and it's like, okay, he's not really doing too much with what the environment is, right? It's just like a shootout scene. But whenever there's like a Bruce Willis one, there's always like it seems like a conscious choice to put him on the rafters where he's fighting to stop a sniper person, flying through, tying fire hose so that way you can use that to repel where you might not have anything else, like to be more resourcefulness.
Mhm.
So I liked his the grounded isn't the right expression, but it does bring it to some level of reality where other action stars just got completely over the top.
Yeah, Carlos, thoughts on Bruce
Yeah.
Willis as an action star?
Bruce Willis is actually, much to Dash's point, one of my favorite action stars. He represented more of a everyman kind of action hero, where it's a little bit easier to put yourself in his shoes, and you kind of feel like a little bit more kind of ownership. And you're right about him being unique in that way, because he is an action star who also has dramatic chops. So you can put him in a lot more complex roles, where he not only needs to be able
And
to,
comedy chops. I guess that's another
and comedy
comparison with
chops.
Tango and Cash, right? Where Bruce Willis is a bona fide comedy
Yeah,
actor. He
yeah,
can
he's got
definitely
great
do
comedic
comedy, whereas
timing,
like Stallone, I don't
and
know what he's
also,
thinking.
like
Mhm.
charming. You can, it's one, you could see him as a romantic lead. I know Stallone was kind of seen at the time as a bit of a sex symbol, but it was always awkward and stilted. Where you could put, Bruce Willis in a tux, in a suit and tie, and at a dinner, and he can deliver lines with his female, love interest, and sell it believably. I would say that he is not completely unique in that. Because there's also, I think, Mel Gibson at the time was also another kind of everyman. You didn't see him as being super bulky, but he uses smarts and kind of charisma and charm to get the job done. And I think it's evidenced by, you look at some of the breadth in the roles, right? So he could be he could be in Die Hard and be that one character, and it's real easy to get typecast. But in some degrees, I guess he is. I don't see this character being any different in this movie than maybe his character in The Fifth Element,
Mhm.
right? That same kind of like, I'm grizzled, but a great detective, and use ingenuity and like slicks to get through this. But then you could turn around and he could do Sixth Sense,
Hmm.
which again is kind of like he's a detective, but there's more of a dramatic and believable. Like, can you imagine Stallone trying to pull off the Sixth Sense?
No,
No.
I
Or
can, and it's funny.
absolutely
Yeah,
not.
I do
And even to some
the
degree,
AI
Mel
version of that.
Gibson, maybe not so much either. But yeah, this guy,
Well,
I
I mean,
mean,
you do
all the props in the world.
it's interesting because you have Sixth Sense and Mel Gibson both working with M. Night,
Right.
right? Like
The signs, yeah.
you see how they both kind of handle those
Yeah.
situations. And I think even like I do feel like the difference with them though, I do have a little bit of a harder time believing like Mel's vulnerability in a situation to versus, because all the ones that you said, and when they, you know, they call this movie like a neo-noir movie, usually that it's a detective who winds up taking a case that's really small, right, and it turns out that it drops them in the middle of a situation that's way bigger than them. And every movie that, like, I kind of think, even Sixth Sense is like, I'm helping a little kid, I'm now in a much bigger, you know, situation.
That doesn't get any bigger than this.
Yeah,
than this.
and I feel like he always nails that, like, of just
He's
being a
great.
small fish in a big pond
It's just a
thing.
shame he's a dick to everybody he's ever worked with.
Yeah, well, now you know, he's dealing
Yeah,
with,
you know, that's true. Aphasia is a tough one,
Yeah,
and also,
shame.
I'll tell you, I think something that, you know, to something that you're more interested in terms of like his career's arc. I towards the end, when he knew he was getting sick, he started taking on all of these B movie roles. He'd be willing to, like, you can throw my face on this box, and, you know, I'm only gonna come in and do 20 minutes, you know, of actual in film time. And I know that we've had these discussions before, you and I, and Anthony, you were there too, talking about ruining your legacy by doing that. For me, I also, though, understand the wish to, like, I can only do this for so long. It's like a boxer or like a sports person. I can only do this for so long. It's time for me to stack as much chips as I can while I can to give to my family before I can't do this anymore. I would argue that doing those movies don't take away from the movies that he made that we all love.
Oh, for sure. For
And
sure. It's just
so,
a shame, like, what happened, and I think there's still a lot to get to the bottom of when it comes to the last 10 years of his career, where he was like putting out like 6 red box movies a year, which was like some insane output, even though he was, you know, barely in them. But I'm curious who was making those decisions for on his behalf. So let's get into the rating.
Rummer. It's Rummer.
Yeah. So Carlos, why don't you kick it off?
So, okay, ratings. So for me, again, like I said a little bit earlier, I I was not offended at all by this movie. I was not really superly impressed by this movie either. So, I'm gonna give this a passing grade, if just barely a passing grade, and I'm gonna give this 3.5 keys, the kind that shred, out of 5.
That's a good grade. That's not
Yeah,
just
yeah.
passing.
I
Yeah.
thought.
No, it's a 70. 3 to 5 is a 70, right?
Well, I would
Which-
say like a 3 is like barely passing.
No,
Yeah.
2.5
3's not
is-
passing because 3's a 60.
Oh, okay. We gotta talk. We gotta
Right.
break down our rating
65,
system
60,
on an episode.
Yeah,
60,
yeah.
Yeah,
right?
to me,
If
that's
you took a
pretty
test in
high.
high school and you got a 60,
Okay.
was that passing?
No, but that's
No,
We'll
it's
figure
not-
that
it's
out
not a
next
pass.
time. But
All right, all right.
but Dash, how about you?
Well, I feel weird because because I like this. I like this movie. It's not one of my favorites. I didn't love it, but the biggest testament for me with this movie was when the movie ends, Bruce Willis and Damon Wayans are walking off, and he's like, I need a partner. And he's like, you just figure it out. He's giving him like some tips on how to do like one-liners. The vets, he's like,
yeah.
for example,
So
you're
you want a
somebody with a
surfboard.
surfboard, you say surf up.
Yeah, that was a good line.
Laugh,
Surf up, pal.
when
I like that.
you go out on a bang. Now, because this movie came out in 1991, I know there's not a sequel. I would have seen the second to last Boy Scout. Like, you know, by the end of this movie, they sold me enough to want to see more of
Another
it.
one.
And
So I'm
gonna
see
give
them
it
as already established. Yeah.
I'm going to give this the above passing grade of 3.5 in a bystander dogs out of 5. So to me, so real quick on my rating systems, 4 is like, I love this, I'll watch it multiple times. This didn't get there yet, but I did like it more than it being a passable movie. I had a great time with it. So 3.5 out of 5.
Yeah, for my rating system, 2.5 is like passable, and 3 is
Okay.
like very good, and then, you know, obviously going up.
All right, so should I change my rating to
Yes,
make it more accurate?
Okay, yes.
All
What's
right,
your
so
rating?
I'll just give it a 3
According
because
to
I
our
think it's
curve.
more than just passable, but
Mhm.
not, you know, anything exceptional.
Okay,
sense.
so my rating is 3.5 dead squirrels out of 5. I think this is like it's very good. It's not excellent, but it is one of my top. I'm not the biggest Bruce Willis fan in the world, but this is on my top 5 Bruce Willis movies. All right, so that is The Last Boy Scout. And before we go, we want to just do something we call quick shots. And this is rapid fire questions, and you guys have a choice, and you let me know what you think. Okay, you guys ready?
Do it.
All right. Yes or no? Is Friday night a great night for football?
Absolutely not.
Yes or no? Would you forgive a cheating wife?
No.
No.
Head or gut?
Gut.
The Last Boy Scout or Tango and Cash?
Last Boy Scout. That's an easy one.
The Last Boy Scout or Die Hard?
Die Hard.
Die Hard.
The Last Boy Scout or Die Hard 2?
Last Boy Scout.
That's Last Boy Scout. No. I'm sorry. I take that back. Die Hard 2.
Okay. The Last Boy Scout or Lethal Weapon?
Lethal Weapon.
Ooh. I'm gonna go Last Boy Scout.
Halle Berry or Chelsea Field?
Halle Berry.
Halle
Chelsea Field or Diane Wiest?
Come on, man. Diane, clearly.
Well, I'm gonna say Halle Berry, but Carlos.
No,
it's a tough
Chelsea
one.
Field,
It's a tough one.
Chelsea Field or Diane Wiest?
Oh, Chelsea Field.
Oh no, that's not. Then that's not a tough one. That's clearly Diane. Oh, as one of my favorite commercials says, "Por qué no los dos?"
Okay. That wasn't an answer, but all right, we'll let it slide this time. Okay. So next episode is going to be Dash's pick. So
what do you got for us, buddy?
Oh man, so for this one, I was thinking about a couple of movies, but I landed on the Christopher. I haven't seen this, so this is the good part about having a podcast. I'm just gonna use it to watch things that I always wanted to see. It's going to be the Christopher Walken movie McBain, directed by James Glickenhaus. I'm really stoked to see it.
McBain like The Simpsons?
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, it looks like a really fun action movie. I wasn't sure about it, but I saw Michael Ironside was in it, and I was like, I want to watch this immediately.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, I never saw that. I remember seeing the poster when I was going to the movies back in the day, and I was curious about that because I think that came out the same year as King of New York, or quite close to it.
Yeah. So this will be all of our first watches. McBain.
All right.
It's
cool.
on Tubi.
I'm excited. I saw Christopher Walken was describing his accent, and he said something really cool. He said, "I just look at the script, and I take out all punctuations." And now, next time you watch any of his things, just imagine what the script looked like, and take out all punctuations, and that's
it's like reading IMDb reviews, basically. But,
yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for tuning in, everyone. If you like what you see, subscribe, like, and comment, and we'll be seeing you all very, very soon.